After 623 days, Charles Leclerc finally returned to the top step of the podium. This time, he wasn't the Mr. P for that fans had joked about. He was a real race winner again, taking victory at the British Grand Prix. But this win was not just about Leclerc ending his drought. It felt more like Ferrari sending a warning to the entire paddock. For years, people have said Ferrari was fast in the corners but weak on the straights. They had a one-lap pace but struggled to carry that performance through a full race. Leclerc had the talent but always seemed to be missing that final step needed to win. At Silverstone, he finally answered all of those questions. But here's the thing, now that Leclerc has won, should only the championship rivals be worried? I don't think so. The teams that should really be paying attention are Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull, and honestly, the entire paddock. Because the most surprising thing about the British Grand Prix was not that Ferrari won. It was the way Ferrari fixed the biggest weakness of their car at a circuit like Silverstone. Everyone knows the Ferrari SF26 has always been a strong cornering car. Its balance through medium and high-speed corners, along with its front-end response, have always been its biggest strengths. Even with the new floor package introduced this weekend, Ferrari's cornering performance remained strong. That part was not surprising. The surprising part was what happened on the straights. In the past, the story was always the same. Ferrari would recover time in the corners, only to give it all back on the straights. The first half of the lap looked impressive. But once they reached the end of the long straights, energy deployment was not strong enough, top speed was lacking, and defending became difficult. Once another car opened DRS, the Ferrari often became an easy target. But at Silverstone, that story changed. Looking at the sector data, Ferrari was clearly stronger than expected in several straight-line sections. Especially on the long straight before Sector 3, Ferrari-powered cars were among the fastest on track. Mercedes did not dominate those areas the way many people expected. And that tells us something important. Ferrari has not magically fixed every weakness overnight. But through the engine upgrade and the new floor setup, they have significantly reduced their losses on the straights. And that's a huge deal. Because Silverstone is not a circuit where you can win at cornering speed alone. It combines high-speed corners, long straights, and sections where energy management is absolutely critical. If you are too slow on the straights, even a strong car through the corners can become vulnerable. You can defend for most of the lap, but one mistake in energy deployment can leave you exposed. This time, Ferrari was no longer in that position. Hamilton was extremely strong on the turn 1 to turn 2. The Mercedes was also competitive through turns 3, 4, and 5. Meanwhile, Leclerc built his race pace step by step during the opening stint. On the first lap, Ferrari locked out the top 2 positions after the opening corners. That moment was incredibly important, because from that point onwards, the race was no longer just about qualifying pace. It became the kind of race Ferrari wanted. Control the pace at the front, protect the tires, and manage the pit window. Leclerc delivered exactly that. His first stint was extremely controlled. By the time he stopped on lap 26, he had already created a valuable gap. But this victory does not mean Ferrari had a completely comfortable race. The driver who made things much more complicated was Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli stayed out more than 10 laps longer than Leclerc during the first stint. And despite the longer stint, his pace remained incredibly consistent. Looking only at average race pace, Antonelli was even slightly faster. In other words, if he had not encountered problems, the second half of the race could have become a direct fight between Leclerc and Antonelli. And Antonelli might even have had a chance to catch him and fight for the win. So this race should not be interpreted as Ferrari completely dominating Mercedes. That is not what happened. The more accurate conclusion is that Ferrari finally reduced its weaknesses enough to win at a circuit that should not have been their strongest. They combined the upgrades, the setup choices, and excellent race execution to put themselves in a winning position. And that difference matters. If Ferrari had only won because Silverstone suited their cornering strength, it would not have been nearly as concerning for the rest of the grid. But the bigger story is that Ferrari's straight-line weakness is now showing clear signs of improvement. Compared with the Austrian Grand Prix, the new power unit upgrade looks much more effective. Power delivery and energy deployment both appear to have taken a step forward. I'm not saying Ferrari has completely caught up with Mercedes in terms of engine performance, but at least they are no longer losing huge amounts of time every time they reach a long straight. and that is exactly what the other teams should be worried about. Ferrari was already one of the strongest cars through the corners. Of course, we should not get carried away yet. The next race at Spa could still be a very difficult weekend for Ferrari. Spa has too many long straights, and it puts huge demands on low drag efficiency and energy deployment. Ferrari will most likely need to reduce downforce even further to maximize straight-line performance. But that comes with a price. Lower downforce can hurt tire degradation, overall balance, and long-run consistency. In other words, they might gain something over a single lap. But whether they can maintain that performance throughout the entire race is still a big question. Mercedes should feel much more confident at Spa. If they can combine their straight-line efficiency with strong long-run pace, Ferrari could face a very difficult challenge. But when the championship moves to Budapest, the situation could completely change. The Hungarian Grand Prix is a very different kind of circuit. It is packed with corners, full of medium-speed sections, and heavily focused on technical performance. Straight-line speed simply does not matter as much there. And that is exactly the type of track where the Ferrari SF26 should be at its best. If the balance is right and the tires stay within the ideal operating window, Ferrari could become one of the favorites. So the true meaning of the British Grand Prix is not just that Leclerc finally ended his long wait for victory. And it is not simply another Ferrari win. The biggest takeaway is that Ferrari has started proving something important. They are no longer only capable of winning when the circuit perfectly suits their strengths. They are now finding solutions on tracks that expose their weaknesses. And here is the scary part. Ferrari still has a bigger engine upgrade planned for later in the season. If that updated package can further close the gap in straight-line performance and energy deployment, Ferrari can no longer be treated as a team that only wins occasionally. They will become a genuine championship threat. Leclerc still has a chance in the Drivers' Championship, and Ferrari is still alive in the Constructors' fight. That is why Silverstone was not just Leclerc's comeback victory. It was Ferrari sending a warning to everyone in the paddock. People used to say Ferrari was brilliant in the corners but weak on the straights. Now, if they are no longer weak on the straights, the questions become much bigger. Can Mercedes still rely on its power unit advantage to maintain control? Can McLaren use its overall efficiency to keep Ferrari behind? Can Red Bull find a way to take back control during the second half of the season? Leclerc waited 623 days for this victory. But perhaps Ferrari was waiting for something even more important. They were waiting for the moment when the biggest weakness of their car was finally reduced. Because once that happens, the second half of the 2026 season could completely change. Follow along if you want to understand what is really happening inside the paddock.